you're tuned back in here to SMC Sports right here on 90.3 WMSC, Upper Montclair, New Jersey. Sean McChesney, Tom Davis here. And now on the phone, we have WFAN NHL and New York Rangers writer Sean Hartnett. Sean, you're on SMC Sports. What's going on?
Hey, it's a pleasure to be on with you guys. How are you today?
Well, thank you for
Doing
coming
good.
on, Sean. I really appreciate coming on. I'm with Tom Davis as well in the studio. And first, I do have to ask, the Rangers pulled out a great win last night, 7-3 in Tampa. I feel like that's what they needed to do to get the momentum going. But what was your overall take on the series so far? What was some of the highs that you saw in the Rangers, and obviously what were the lows that they need to correct going into Friday night?
Well, every single game's been different. It seems certain games the Rangers get sucked into that high tempo game that the Lightning really thrive in. So every game's been different. Some days you'll see the Lightning try to pull out a defensive clinic. Other days they'll try to spread it out and beat the Rangers skill for skill. Going to last night, I would have thought that the Lightning had the edge. I would have thought that they were about to close it out given the way that they were playing. And you looked at the way that the Lightning dominated possession over the first two periods, it seemed like it was all over for the Rangers. But then, that line by, Brassard, Nash, and JT Miller were just absolutely huge and stepped up after Lundqvist was able to keep things quiet in the first two periods.
Yeah, and just for the record, we've just hit the top of the hour. You're listening to 90.3 WMSC, Upper Montclair, New Jersey, SMC Sports. Sean and Tom in studio. Sean Hartnett, WFAN NHL writer and New York Rangers writer for WFAN Radio, is on with us. And last night in Game 6, I thought it was probably the Rangers' best game of the series, probably the best hockey game that they played in a while. And what do you think they did differently than in Games 1 and 4, which they won? And what mistakes do you think that they corrected from the games that they lost, especially Games 2 and Game 3? What do you think they corrected on?
Well, head coach Alain Vigneault said that the third period was probably the best period they played all series, and I would happen to agree with that. What changed for the Rangers in the third period is that they became more aggressive on the forecheck, and it seemed like they were able to just turn the game and turn all the momentum in their favor, and you saw what happened, obviously, with the first line dominating.
Yeah, no question. It was definitely probably one of their best games of the series, probably the best game of the series. And one player that I wanted to address to you was Henrik Lundqvist. Last night he had, I think, about 39 saves. Some of his saves had my jaw drop. Me and Tom were watching the game, and we're just questioning how he made these saves, I feel like there's just a switch that goes through his head every time he's in an elimination situation. However, in the entire series, Lundqvist has been on and off from the games that he's been good and the games he's been bad. Do you think he could take this momentum into the Garden for Game 7?
Well, he seemed like he had the energy last night. It seemed like earlier in the series he was kind of a little bit more fatigued, but now I think he has the right level of energy, and I think going into Game 7 he'll be well rested. And, if the Lightning come hard at him, considering the firepower they have with the triplets line, Stamkos and Killorn, this is a very, very skilled and very gifted Lightning team, so you would imagine that they're going to throw the kitchen sink at Lundqvist in Game 7, but I expect Lundqvist to be up to the task.
No, I definitely feel like, and I had an argument with my friend earlier in the show. We had a little debate about how Tampa's going to come out in Game 7, and I agree. I feel like Tampa's going to come out with absolutely nothing to lose. Neither team has anything to lose right now because it's win or go. Well, they have everything to lose, but it's win or go home for both teams. So they're going to leave everything on the ice, both teams, and I feel like Lundqvist is going to take like 40 or 50 shots, but now that you're talking about rest for a minute, I do want to mention that, this is the first time that I've seen that they're going to get 2 nights rest instead of 1. How do you think that's going to affect both teams physically and mentally?
Well, I don't expect there to be any real big deal as far as their mentality goes. The Rangers have been in this situation so many times. They know what it takes. They know how to prepare for it. This group, they're very accountable, and they hold each other to a high level of accountability. Basically getting some days off will certainly help the Rangers. You look at Rick Nash, and sometimes with the amount of minutes that he's getting and the workload that he gets, playing all situations, power play, penalty kill, there's times where you think maybe he's dragging a little bit. So, you could see a very fresh and energetic Nash in Game 7, I would think.
Yeah, I definitely feel like all these Rangers are just going to come into one because I was even running through the stats before. The Rangers are 7-0 when going into the Garden for elimination. Something clicks inside them that says we cannot lose, and we will not lose in the Garden. We will not go home tonight. And I saw the same thing in Washington when they faced Washington games 5 and 7. It's just something clicks inside them when they're not having the greatest series. And just something clicks in them when they're up for elimination. They're like, we got this. This is where the series is going to turn around. And another thing that I thought that they did great last night was containing Tyler Johnson, NHL leading goal scorer for the playoffs right now with 12 goals. And I think that was part of the Lightning taking it, or part of the Lightning's offense shutting down. And what's your opinion on that?
Well, for me, I think it only takes one chance for Johnson. I mean, if he goes and gets that one breakaway chance, he's going to be dangerous. He has a lot of moves in his arsenal. He's a really, really high-skill player, and you look at his breakaway speed. I mean, you look at a guy like Hagelin. I'd imagine that if you put him and Tyler Johnson in a foot race, they'd both be pretty close. But, unlike Hagelin, he has better hands and is able to really cause a lot of havoc when he's skating in one-on-one. I thought that the Rangers did a better job of shutting down the triplets line. There are times out there when you look at guys like Kevin Kline and Dan Girardi, those are the kind of players you don't want on the ice when the triplets line is out there because they don't really have the foot speed to keep up with those guys. Yeah,
absolutely. And I've even said it before, I feel like this is going to be the NHL game of the year on Friday night, Game 7. And, even though you have the Blackhawks and the Ducks on the Western Conference side, I feel like that the Rangers and Lightning have written in a memorable story that's going to culminate in Game 7. I feel like it's going to be the greatest game of the year. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think, regardless of whether the Rangers are able to win it or whether the Lightning do, I think the series is going to be talked about for many years to come.
Absolutely.
It's going to be one of those series that becomes ingrained in the memories of hockey fans for decades. So it's going to be amazing, and it'll be just a pleasure to be there covering it on Friday night.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be memorable watching, and I know I'll definitely be tuned in for the entire thing. And just getting your perspective on this, the Rangers, I thought, did a better job the past few games, whether they won or lost, in controlling the mistakes that they've made. But overall in the series, what do you think their biggest problem was? Capitalizing on power plays because they've barely done that. Committing stupid penalties, no defense in crucial situations. What do you think the Rangers' biggest problem was that put them in this situation?
I would say discipline was the biggest issue. Not just, taking bad penalties, but defensive discipline. Not taking the right angles, not, leaving guys. You saw, like, when they left Callahan open there on the power play, and Callahan was able to stand right by the blue line, and he was able to exploit the Rangers there. So, they need to continue to stay disciplined in both their mentality and also their positioning. As far as some of the, dumb penalties, you look at, like, penalties like Dom Moore checking a guy from behind into the boards, or, Kreider getting a little bit overzealous and taking out his own player, and then last night you saw the undisciplined penalty that Kreider took with the extra little bit of retaliation there. So, I'm sure Vigneault is going to talk with Kreider, and he's going to make sure that Kreider is well aware you can't take those kind of penalties into Game 7.
Yeah, I agree. My name's Tom, but hey, Tom. I totally agree that their lack of defense has really hurt them. Just because, like, you could see in most of the games that the Lightning have had a lot of open shots, and it's been really hard to watch sometimes because you'll watch and all of a sudden you'll be like, why is nobody covering that guy? And that, or like you had mentioned last night, Sean and I had watched the game, and you watched Kreider. He made a beautiful hit on Stamkos and then goes and cross-checks him. And that ruined a nice play. And then Callahan goes and scores on that power play.
Well, yeah, I think Kreider's always been that kind of risk-reward player. And as he gets older and as he matures, you're going to see less of those moments where he might do something that's a little bit selfish as opposed to something that fits into the team dynamic. But by no means am I calling Kreider a selfish player, but he has these moments where he doesn't think and he just does the undisciplined thing or takes the wrong route out there on the ice.
Yeah, you could see that every now and then.
Yeah, and just shifting away from Rangers Lightning for just a minute, because we do have another matchup on the West Coast, and that's Chicago Blackhawks and Anaheim Ducks. Game 6 is tonight. Anaheim up 3-2 on the series. And just real quick before we get back into the Rangers, because this show has been pretty much domination on Rangers previewing Game 7. We've been talking about it all day long. But, being a little bit fair to the Western Conference, give me your take on the series between the Ducks and the Blackhawks. Ducks lead 3-2. Who do you think is taking the series and why?
I'm going to still go with the Blackhawks because I think that pure skill beats the physical team. I think that if the Blackhawks are executing and playing their game, I think they have so much skill all over the ice that, they can be the kind of team that takes us to a Game 7 and wins it.
Yeah, no question. I feel like it's been an on and off series. One team takes one, the other team takes the other. And I've been saying for weeks, I said, if this doesn't go 7, I'm going to be disappointed because both teams I felt were so evenly matched going into the Western Conference Finals. It was almost meant for a 7-game series.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun watching a team like the Anaheim Ducks that just play such a power, physical, bruising game against a team, littered with talent all across the lineup in the Blackhawks. So it's definitely a series where the fans have gotten their money's worth, and hopefully they'll get their full money's worth if it goes to a 7th game.
Yeah, definitely, and you could see that Chicago could win, and you've seen in the past few years the Ducks, they play great throughout the regular season. Then when it comes to the playoffs, they just slip and let it fall away.
Yeah, well, let's not get them confused with the St. Louis Blues, There's a big difference between, what they do compared to what the Blues have done in early rounds.
No question. And I do like your prediction with Chicago. That's honestly, to a lot of people, a stretch because, it's not like the Rangers where they have the Lightning, I feel, right where they want them in Game 7 because, the Ducks could lose tonight in Chicago, but then they go home for Game 7. I feel like the pressure is still on Chicago in both games, unlike the series with New York. I feel like the pressure is shifting to Tampa Bay. What do you think?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one?
Well, I was saying like how Chicago can win Game 6 tonight at home, but has to go to Anaheim for Game 7. It's not like with New York where they won Game 6 on the road. Now I feel the pressure is now shifting to the Tampa Bay Lightning for Game 7. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, it's one thing to be a great team, and it's another thing to be an experienced team. And the Rangers have had the experiences over the years. I mean, no team's played more playoff games than the Rangers have over the past couple seasons. They've been through every single situation with their backs against their wall. And this Lightning team, I think they're the better team on paper. I think they're more talented. I think they're faster. I think they can win games in more ways than the Rangers can. But when it comes to a Game 7, it's really hard to get to bet against the experience of the Rangers.
Yeah, no question. And going back on stats a little bit, Rangers going into the Garden 7-0 when facing elimination. They're going to have a huge home ice advantage, probably about 20,000 people wearing red, white, and blue on Friday night. The entire city and the entire area is going to be behind this team on Friday. Do you think that's enough to push the Rangers into the finals with, everything that they're capable of in elimination games? Do you think that's enough to push them into the finals? Can they win Game 7?
Well, yeah. I mean, the Rangers feed off of that. I mean, if you talk to the guys in the room, which I have the pleasure of doing, these guys are well aware of who they represent and, what it means to be a Ranger and what it means to, bring this team back to where the fans want it to be. They want to see the Rangers replicate the memories in 1994, and they came very close last season. So, coming that close last season obviously is a huge motivating factor. And, when it comes down to it, Game 7 is alone just by itself a huge motivating factor. These guys, they're just going to give it all on the ice, and it's going to be an absolute classic, I'd imagine.
Yeah, no question. And, Sean, before I let you go, I do want to get your prediction. If you could give us a matchup right now of your predictions, who do you think represents the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference in the Stanley Cup Finals?
Well, I don't want to make it sound like I'm going back on my original prediction because in my columns I had to do a prediction earlier, and I said that the Lightning would win in 6. So I've been proved wrong right now, and the Rangers, they just prove you wrong at every juncture, every single time that their will is tested. So I'm going to go with the Rangers and the Blackhawks in the Stanley Cup Final.
That's actually a great prediction.
That seems like a good matchup to watch too.
I was leaning on that as well, and that's just the beauty of being a Ranger fan. They always prove the haters wrong, and I'm loving it. So, Sean, I appreciate you calling in. Thank you so much for your insight. Have fun on Friday night covering the game, and let's hope for the Rangers to clinch the Eastern Conference on Friday.
Okay, thanks for having me. You guys have a great afternoon.
Thank you. You too, Sean. That was Sean Hartnett, WFAN NHL and New York Rangers writer. So definitely a great interview, I thought, and it kind of came together last minute.
Yeah.
Definitely a great interview. So we're going to take a quick break here on SMC Sports, and we will be right back with more hockey coverage, more NBA, more MLB, just whatever we want to do to just wrap up these last 45 minutes, and we will be back after this.
I'm in almost every school bus and classroom. You see me